Father, as we come before the throne room of grace this evening, Lord, we ask your presence here among us. Lord, that you would grant us your wisdom, your knowledge, your understanding, and discernment, Lord, in all things here tonight. We ask you, Lord, to be with the mayor, her family, and Lord, be with the council members, our city administrator, and our city attorney, Lord. I just ask that you would help us all and to take care of business tonight in a way that's pleasing to you. And we ask you, Lord, for your presence among us. In Christ's name.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome everybody to this beautiful April 1st public hearing and work session meeting. I'd like to call it to order. The first thing on the agenda would be our minute approval. So we have March the 18th, our regular meeting, and we also have our March 31st special call meeting minutes to approve. So I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve both the March 18th and March 31st meetings.
I'll second. All in favor, show of hands.
Boom.
Lee, all approved. The next thing on the agenda are our reports, and we have our financial department report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You do have in front of you a financial report. I will say, if it's acceptable to the council, it is a bit redundant to the budget amendment we're going to discuss later. So I am prepared to answer any questions, but we'll go through line by line the amendment, which will highlight the items that are of significance and importance that you'll see in your year-to-date financials. So if it pleases the council, I'd like to have that discussion for the budget amendment. Thank you all.
Next, we have the police department report.
Good evening. I'll be giving the police report for the month of March. Area checks. We had a total of 621 incidents, 254 accidents, 15 arrests, 21 traffic stops, 506 citations, 176 reports, 112. Also, you see I added pictures. Thanks the mayor and Miss Nikki, we read to the elementary school. That's a picture of myself. Then also it's a picture of myself to the right of that. Coach Mark Rick did Law Enforcement Day, had all the law enforcement all over the state of Georgia come to Georgia down, and we was able to go and watch Georgia have a practice. Then at the very bottom, thanks to Councilman Penn, he brought Castile Academy by the police department. We had the patrol car, did a modified toucher truck along with Mr. Brett when they came by City Hall. And then also in the month of March, the city and chief sent me back up to Banks County to be certified again for the next 2 years at a certified car seat technician for the city of Statham. Any questions of myself and the police department?
Did you run a post pattern when you were at the UGA campus?
No, sir.
For Coach Rick?
This year they didn't allow us on the field or take cell phones out there this year.
Okay.
Because people be posting videos, sir. Thank you.
Great job, great job. Thank you for everything that you do for the city of Statham. Public Works, Brett.
Good evening, how are y'all?
We're fabulous.
All righty, for the month of March, we pulled all our required EPD samples for the water system, submitted all our monthly reports required for the water system. Continued working with that large project along 316 with GDOT. Repaired several water leaks as normal, especially with the temperature change here lately. March and really this past 2 weeks have been really treacherous on us with water leaks. Changing temperatures always affect the ground temperature and all affects the pipes and ground. Cheryl and myself attended another LGRMS safety coordinator class in Gainesville. There's 2 more modules left for us to have the dedication of a certified safety coordinator for the city. And of course, like we went over last month, that gives us incentives and stuff, and we can enroll in that safety grant program. It gives us a percentage of our premium towards safety equipment and whatnot.
It's awesome.
And then, of course, after we get this certification, we'll have to keep it up. I think it'll be every year. It might be even two years. Yeah. We continued replacing some customer meters that were not reading correctly. And I spoke last how I was going to get you guys that report that Mr. Joe can run of what we've replaced. Year to date, from January 1 till last week, we're sitting at 141 meters we've changed out or reading incorrectly. Just for instance, my water meter was on that list as well. And it was with the base fees and all, and it was reading, we were getting monthly readings on it, of course, but something was not quite picking up correctly. Now mine is working correctly, and the usage is lining up with the average usage.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Which direction were they misreading? Did anybody tell, or?
It showed whether it be a lot of backflow, like flow back through the meter, or under reading, more or less. Yes, sir. So we're trying to improve and pick up more revenue, get an exact measurement with the meters we have to go through the ground. So, and that all goes along to upgrading and keeping a good stance on our meters. That also goes along with EPD's rules and regulations of the water loss audit that we have to perform every year. That gives us a good grade if we keep a close eye on our customer retail meters and keep those in check and keep them changed out regularly if they're reading wrong or whatever. So we're keeping up to date on that.
But doesn't that also help with when you're going around and reading the
Yeah,
meters?
it improves efficiency for sure.
Yes.
Because we're radio read, so we'll drive by and read with our employees with our system and our vehicles, and they'll pick up the readings. Well, what's not picking up, they would have to manually get out of the vehicle and read. So that takes time. Time is money.
Right.
So now, when I first started in August, we're taking about 2 days to read meters. Now we're reading it with the computer system in the truck, less than a whole day.
That's awesome. That's great.
Of course. So more efficiency saves money for the
That's
system.
right.
Alrighty. As y'all will notice, all the crosswalk signs are installed and active now. I have some products that we're waiting on. Part of those signs coming from Canada, so that took a little bit. But they are active and they work great from what I can see, and people were using them pretty regularly. So.
And that was a grant, is that correct? Or you got this from a grant?
Cheryl, before I come, she applied for a SAP grant through the GDOT and got awarded a $70-something thousand grant for the city for safety for roads. So,
Way to go, Cheryl.
So is that,
Kudos.
is that all that we can do, or these? I'm asking about 2nd Street and Broad.
Well, it's going to be
Are we able to?
near the school, from what I understand. And we're also doing some striping along with this grant.
Right.
And you'll see that coming here soon. So.
They also have, they just released a couple other grants that are coming out.
Okay.
So that could, it just depends, I haven't gotten a list of what it can be applied for, but
Okay.
definitely let me know.
Cool. Thank you.
And along with the police department, like Mr. Hood mentioned, we had a visit from Castile Academy. The kids enjoyed that. They enjoyed the police department. They enjoyed the city hall and speaking with the mayor and touching and playing with the track route out in the yard out there. So we enjoyed it just as much as they did.
They had a blast that day.
Yeah, they did. I'm glad. Also worked with EMI, our engineering company, and we completed the emergency response plan and the asset management plan that is required for the water system for EPD and EPA. Got that handled. That is part of our stipulations of our water system operation permit as well. We had to have those plans in place. And either we, one, did not have one of those plans in place, or they were extremely old. So those are all updated, and now we meet our specifications for our permit. Lastly, we're looking forward to the cleanup day and getting ready for it, April 26th. And we look forward to assisting whatever Public Works needs to help with. We look forward to it.
That's great. What are the hours? Do we know the hours yet?
8 to 4, and then the paper shredding is 10 to 2.
10 to 2. Okay, great.
And,
And it'll be in front of Dave's over here on Railroad.
okay.
Okay.
So what we'll do is we'll have traffic come in
From this
along
side.
this side to unload, and then they have to continue downward.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
That's great.
and Cheryl's lined up employees at the city hall to handle the checking, and then I'll line up employees out in the field for assistance and all.
Awesome.
One last thing, and I'm sure Ms. Rachel with the budget will touch on it. I just wanted to, and it just came to mind this afternoon because we sold one of our surplus to a last piece of equipment that we're going to do here lately. Year to date, this year, we have surplused a few items and made a little over, brought back a little over $10,000 into the budget.
Awesome.
Last year in 24, year to date, was several items, and it was roughly $31,000 back into the budget. Items that we're no longer using, wasn't used to the city anymore. It's time just to get rid of them and get them gone, and let's use a bunch or something else.
Thank you.
Any questions?
We got our own department.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.
My report will be brief. I did meet with the Red Cross of Northeast Georgia on March the 22nd on a Saturday. They were out installing smoke detectors in the city of Statham to different residents. And Tim, you might want to expound on it because he was out there helping.
Yeah, it was, well, the area that I worked in was over on Butterfly Lane, but they put us into groups of 3 people, and then they had different maps all around the city. So groups just went door to door and asked people if they needed, either they needed smoke detectors or they had old smoke detectors that needed updated. And we would, if they allowed us in, then we would just go in and install smoke detectors. It was really good program.
Very good program, and they selected us, so that was awesome. This past week, I've been putting together a little film of the city, and I presented it today at the Chamber State of the Cities. Hopefully, we can get that up for you at one of our meetings so you can see it, because it's a pretty cool video. Other than that, that's my report. And so on to committees. Does anybody have anything else from one of your committees that you would like to report?
Yeah, I'll start with the tree committee. Our next meeting is April 21st, 6:30, right here in this room. Our guest speaker is Josh Grant from UGA Extension and the 4-H Club, the Barrow County 4-H Club. Our icebreaker question is, would you rather lose your sense of hearing or your memory? I know which rather I'd lose. So you guys come on out to the meeting, public's invited, and let us know. Thanks.
Would you like?
Yes, sure. I just want to remind everybody that we're having a makers market here on April 12th from 9 to 3. We're sold out, so come and get some gifts for Easter, Mother's Day. It's all handmade and homemade things from local vendors.
It's awesome. Looking forward to that. Anybody else? Okay. Then we'll move on to our discussion items. The light pollution ordinance.
Turn on the microphone before I get yelled at. This is the second appearance of this ordinance before the council at a work session. As y'all may recall, at the March, city council meeting, this matter was tabled because of changes that we received. So one of my council, Tim, took the ordinance and shared it with several members of the public that are involved in what's called the Dark Sky Movement, which is an organization and a group that is attempting to prevent light pollution, especially at night, harmful light pollution throughout the state of Georgia and throughout the country, frankly. And we received some feedback from them on ways that we could kind of tighten up the proposed ordinance. Fortunately, Nikki has done a good job of printing off this in red line so you can see exactly the changes that were made from the first draft. A couple things that I want to particularly highlight because I think it deserves some discussion. First, we tightened up the definition of a fully shielded fixture. The idea being that there needs to be some kind of shielding that directs the light into a certain direction, downward specifically. So if you think about a horizontal plane, you basically want light shooting down, not up into the sky. The biggest tangible change that you need to be aware of is on page 6, which is where we added the definition or the prohibitions about the color of illumination. If you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or any of your hardware stores and you go to the light bulb section, you'll see a wide variety of different types of lights. You've got daylight, you've got bright white, you've got soft white, warm white, if you will. And the way that the color spectrum is created, it's measured in terms of degrees Kelvin. I never thought I'd ever need to know that after high school chemistry, but here we are. And the recommendation from the Dark Sky Movement was that it should be no more than 3,000 Kelvin. If you want to, some things you can think about, daylight, that's like 7,000 Kelvin. A candle is like 1,000. So it's more on the yellow-orange end of the spectrum than on the nuclear white that you see being popular, especially in some of those LED, what are almost like spotlights, if you will. They recommended 3,000 Kelvin. I found one city in Georgia, specifically, or two cities, Dunwoody and Chamblee, have adopted 3,000. I've also seen others that have adopted 4,000, Columbia County being one of those. We recall that this ordinance was modeled after Flowery Branch and Winder. They did not have any kind of color illumination regulations, so I was kind of shooting in the dark. So 4,000 is a little bit more generous than 3,000 from a light perspective, but that's something that y'all just need to be mindful of. The other things that you need to be aware of. So a couple of other comments we received that did not get incorporated into this, but I wanted to discuss them very briefly. Did we want to add provisions that encourage or require the use of timers, motion sensors, dimmers when they're not needed after certain hours? That's certainly doable. I have not seen any regulation anywhere in any of the cities that I looked into where that's required, but it makes some intuitive sense to me. I just didn't want to take a shot in the dark at it if y'all weren't interested in that. There was a suggestion that maybe you designate certain areas as dark sky zones where lighting has to be stricter than others. I'm not a big fan of that, only because, again, same thing we talked about yesterday, because of Statham's size, because we have massive residential nodes directly up adjacent to the downtown district and other commercial applications. Imposing dark sky zones would be very, very, very difficult, and I just think it's an enforcement nightmare. How complaints are handled was another question they had, adding a process for addressing complaints about light trespass. The enforcement of this code is the same as any other code that we have in the city of Statham. If there's a complaint, you file it with the code enforcement officer or the police department, and if a violation of an ordinance is determined, a citation can be issued and brought to the municipal court. And then finally, they talked about potentially adding a schedule for upgrading non-compliant lighting. I don't believe that's legally enforceable. If you have non-compliant lighting, it's grandfathered in. You can't, and just like any other non-conforming use under our code, you can't expand it or make it worse but you can replace it. So let me give you a great example. And I'm going to use those light bulbs as an example. Let's say you've got a 5,000 Kelvin tractor beam on your driveway. You can't increase it. You can't go find something even brighter, like 7,000 Kelvin, but you can replace it if it goes bad with the same thing. So you can change out like for like, but you can't make the violation worse, if that makes sense. So those were some things that were brought up, and I just wanted to make sure that the council knew that they were considered, but not incorporated at this time unless y'all tell me otherwise. But those were the big changes that I wanted to flag for everybody. Happy to answer any questions. Nailed it. There were 3 second statements in there.
Next on the agenda is Eddie's rental agreement.
At this time, we don't have an agreement. I'm hoping to have it by the voting session. Still doing some research on it and have to set a meeting with Edmund. So hopefully within the week we'll have something.
I'm happy to take the lead on this one. This is about the proposed change to the alcohol ordinance. So a little bit of background and history about this. So as y'all know, Nico Patel, who's interested in opening Nico's Wine Shop, who's here tonight, came before council a couple years ago to discuss kind of his business plan, and we had to make some changes to our alcohol ordinance in order to allow that to happen. Now the problem, could you go back to the design, thank you. So I remember being a part, because I drafted the ordinance that's on the books right now that requires wine tasting permits. The concern that the council had at the time, and I think that there was a disconnect and kind of not a clear explanation of what was being proposed, was, and if I'm going to show you using this, if I could, I'm going to turn this so the council can see it. That's a trip hazard. So this large area you see here is your traditional package store, retail sales for beer, wine, liquor. Okay. This area you see right here with circular tables and chairs is identified as event rental. Now, originally, when this project was brought before us, it was the understanding of myself and the council that this was all going to be one single business, and this was going to be an area within this business. And the concern was, when you have a package store of this size, we don't want this turning into a full-blown bar. And so when it was described that there would be wine classes and tastings, we said, okay, but you need to get special permits for every time you want to do it to prevent it from becoming that kind of bar area, if you will. Now, Nico has met with myself and Cheryl and has explained it a little bit clearer. These are actually two separate and distinct businesses, two distinct economic activities, if you will. So you have the package store, and these doors do open for stocking purposes and employee access, but there will not be any flow of customers from one to the other. In fact, customers of the wine tasting room would have to enter from a second entrance, from its own separate standalone entrance to the to the package store, if you will. So now if we pull up the pictures, what the business for the wine tasting area is going to look like, and I'm familiar with this because there's one of these down in Snowville, actually owned by Mr. Patel. He also has one out in Monroe, is that right?
The new one opening, it's not me, but there's the same concept I'm trying to put it here.
Understood. So as you can see, it's got more of a kind of a boutique vibe to it, where you have the wines that are being for sale by the bottle, not for consumption on site, along here in racks. And then here you have these dispenser machines where a patron can come in, purchase a card, and using that card they can get tastings of wine. and there's areas for meeting and sitting and enjoying a night with friends and what have you. And so this is the business model for the wine tasting shop. Now this is fundamentally different than what we understood it to be. Presently, our ordinance does not really have it doesn't permit a use like this. Ours is kind of black and white in that you're either selling retail package, no consumption on premises, or you're a restaurant and or a bar and you're selling for consumption on premises only, no retail takeaway, if you will, of any kind. So this is kind of a hybrid business, if you will, that's unique to this particular type of business model. So what we have done, based upon this new understanding, is we have drafted a revision to what was the wine tasting event permit regulation, and instead we've adopted something we call a wine shop license, which allows the license holder to engage in package sales of beer and wine and allows for wine consumption on site, subject to all the normal rules of any kind of establishment, distances from schools and churches, regulation of hours. All people who work there must be a certain age and trained. They are responsible for the consumption of anybody on site. They can have the right to terminate sales to anybody if somebody's unruly or has had too much to drink. All the normal rules that we have for, the Mexican restaurant or any restaurant in the city for that matter. So this ordinance is modeled after the one down in Snellville and also the one out in Madison that has, not Madison, Monroe, where these establishments have been operating for a significant amount of time and are currently under construction and about to open. So that is why a change is necessary. That's why it's different. It's not a one-off permit. It's more of a sustained business permit, subject to annual renewals. I think I've generally summarized what we're trying to achieve. So if y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Nico's here also to answer any questions about the specific business plan, model, all that fun stuff.
Is that, that's going to be the winery over here?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to be the small section of the building. So the building will have the package store, separate entrance, and then it'll have the wine shop next door.
Will that ordinance, it provided, it doesn't allow the wine tasting in cups to leave that location at any time?
There's no open container in the city. It doesn't change that. It's just like a restaurant. All consumption must be within the four walls of that business.
And it'll be one business license, one alcohol license. It's not, they won't be separate.
No, there will
It'll
be.
be two
They will be
different-
separate. So the
two
package
different,
store will
gotcha.
have a business license, and it will have its own package licenses, which will actually be 3: retail beer,
Gotcha.
retail wine, retail distilled spirits. And then on the other side, it will be business license, packaged beer, packaged wine, and wine shop license.
Okay.
So the smaller area where the tables are, the application has to be renewed every year?
Mm-hmm. Both sides.
All of our,
Mhm.
all of our business licenses have to be renewed annually.
All business licenses, all alcohol licenses have to be renewed annually.
You good with this, Nico?
I'm sorry.
You good with this? What we got?
This will give me ability to what, how it is and what I want to bring it in. That Monroe is what I wanted to do first year, but they did betray while all this project delayed, so. But that, if I can get that, yes, it will be special to the city.
I think that one truly rocks. So, let's go with all that.
That Monroe is going to be so busy because of that.
Where is it you have one open now?
I had in a Snavely. In the Snavely?
Snellville.
Yeah, and then,
You have a store open in Green now,
yes, yes,
under this business model,
same one.
same thing?
If you, It's located on Scenic Highway, very close to the intersection of 78, in a small shopping center right there with a Japanese restaurant, a T-Mobile, an urgent care center. It's 3.8 miles from my house. So this ordinance would come up at the next meeting. The business license has already been approved, and the alcohol licenses have, well, not yet. Not yet. Okay, so it's under construction. Once it's finished, then we'll have the business license and the. Mm-hmm. Yes. But this ordinance is at next voting session.
You miss Rachel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no. Boy, no. Come forward. No. You've got a lot of talking to do, right? Sorry. Number 4, first reading of the fiscal 25 mid-year budget amendment. It's sitting right here in front of my face.
We're good.
All right, well, what you have before you in your packet is, it has 2 pieces to it. You'll see the vertical memo that kind of pulls out the items that are changing. And then you have a landscape worksheet, which has page numbers if we need to reference it. It gives you all of the accounts. And what I did was this account gives you all the year-to-date information as compared to the budget. And the memo pulls out those items and those line items that are going to be part of this budget amendment, okay? So it just gives us a more succinct way to look at the changes. So, we'll start with the general fund. You know by now that's the main operating fund, so we'll always start with that chief operating fund. So, with the revenues, you will see on each of these line items there is a footnote, 1, 2, 3, and 4. If the footnote is a 1, this is really just a kind of a change in projection. We have either received more or less revenues, and we're really just kind of truing up our budget to what we now anticipate knowing more. We're over midway through the year. We know a little bit more about where we're going to project ourselves in the fiscal year. So that is the case in those items. That is the circumstance for every single item in your taxes budget. We expect to increase the taxes budget by $51,660 in totality. The majority of that you'll see is related to electric franchise fee and insurance premium tax. And we just take a generally conservative approach on those revenue line items. Those are 2 items I always consistently have budget amendments on, but I feel like that's conservative is the way I approach budgeting. So we'll see a little bit of an increase in our revenues in that area. The next category of revenues is licenses and permits. We are also budgeting for an increase to those revenue line items, primarily related to building permits and inspection fees that we've received that was above anticipated levels. Additionally, business licenses have come in above anticipated levels as well. And I know the staff is diligently working on getting any delinquent businesses caught up and paying. So it's very likely that we'll be in a better position even yet by the end of the year. Next is charges for services. This is the first category where you'll see a decrease. This is attributable to, adjusting our end-of-year projection based on current factors and what we know. We really didn't know when we started this budget year with the renovations in the community center and what those rent revenues would look like. So we kind of took a shot in the dark, put a number on it, and we needed to adjust that. And every year as we experience the rental revenues throughout the year, we'll be better and better at estimating those lines. The newsletter is another reduction. That's just a periodical we don't do anymore, so it shouldn't be included.
Rachel, sorry.
Yes, please do interrupt me. I want to answer your
What does
questions.
the 2 mean then?
I'm sorry?
What does the 2 mean?
I'm sorry, on the next page. My formatting intended it to be on the bottom of the first page, and I'm afraid it's not. But that periodical newsletter is just no longer published. So I understand businesses maybe used to pay to advertise in a newsletter, and the newsletter stopped, so that revenue is not coming in anymore. The next one is your fines and forfeitures. The only line item we're adjusting in this category is for the blue line revenues. Those speed cameras are no longer operating, or we're not receiving revenues for them. So we're reducing that line by $55,000. Interest. Fortunately, well, it depends on what side of the coin you're on, fortunately, unfortunately, but fortunately for our investment income, rates are still strong, and that definitely helps us from an investment income perspective. We are increasing our budget for interest income to the tune of $65,000. Again, I took a conservative approach here because there was projections of rate reductions, and of course that impacts us in a trickle-down way, but those same aggressive reductions have not taken place, so we're doing well there. Contributions from private sources, we've just received some that we had not budgeted for. And then our miscellaneous revenue, again, this is just kind of housekeeping and cleanup to adjust for various components of our miscellaneous revenue for activity that's occurred year to date. The last line, and the one that probably needs the most explanation, is your other financing sources. These are what we at GASB don't consider revenues, they are financing sources. One of those is the sale of assets. Brett touched on that, so you'll see an amendment there for $25,800. Of course, that is not capturing everything. It's not capturing the welder we sold today. But as of mid-year, we're adjusting sale of assets by $25,800. The other item there, budgeted use of reserves. What that is the police department. Y'all have recently looked at those purchase of those vehicles, and the way that those purchase of vehicles was funded is through reserves. Blue line revenues have been received in prior years, had not been spent, and so they've been accruing in your reserve balance, in your equity balance. Those revenues were utilized to purchase these police vehicles, in part. So the vehicles were $196,000. You'll see an amendment here for $180,000. That is because we had an existing budget in the vehicles line item. We were able to utilize some of that. So that is what that budgeted use of reserves is. That is council acknowledging that we're going to take some equity and pay for those vehicles. So in the general fund, for your revenues, we're budgeting an increase of $363,006. Okay? So now look at the expenditure side of things, how we're spending our money and what we're amending in that area for fiscal year 2025. The legislative department, and bear with me, some of these are going to be a little bit redundant department to department because there is some, just as I mentioned, housekeeping and cleanup as things throughout the year come in a little different than anticipated, 9 months ago, right? So workers' comp in the legislative department, we're going to have some adjustment between departments on our workers' comp into how that bill was allocated. The elections department, that is an unbudgeted, a department that did not have a budget, and we've spent about $2,000 there, so we're increasing that expenditure budget. The general administration department has also got an adjustment for workers' comp. We are anticipating a reduction in our projection of legal fee expenditures. And then we're adding some expenditures here. We're adding, recognizing the budget for the city hall renovation and some repairs and maintenance. So in total, your general administration budget increase is about $43,000. Moving on to your police department. You'll see here some personnel items. There have been a larger expenditure of overtime incurred, as well as a change in the projection of holiday pay. So those two items total a $15,000 increase in the personnel expenditures for the police department. Again, we're this workers' comp line item you'll see repeated. It's where we're moving the budget for workers' comp around actual expenditures. Repairs and maintenance and gasoline, these are areas where when we look at what's been spent year to date and we look at the budget, we anticipate ending the year with a surplus on those two line items, meaning we have more budget than we anticipate spending. So we were able to use those and offset some of the other increases in the personnel line items. Okay. And then there's your purchase of vehicles, the $184.96 that we're funding with reserves. Okay, so you'll see a dollar for dollar funding there. So in total, the police budget will increase by $185,496. The K-9 department, one line, their overtime is more than we anticipated at the beginning of the year, so we're increasing the K-9 budget for $6,000. All right, we'll move to page 3, and the Public Works Department. The Public Works Department has had a little bit of activity here that we needed to make sure we picked up. One being the purchase of a box trailer for $5,000. And then these next two items are related. We had budgeted money for infrastructure and storm drainage. That money has been spent in small amounts here and there, but the bulk of it is going to be, or a good bit of it is going to be used for matching the LMIG funds. And so you'll see those $10,000 reductions in those line items, and the purpose of that is to serve, those amounts will be transferred to the LMIG fund to serve as the match. We are required to match 30% in LMIG funding, so that represents city dollars that we match the LMIG. The total decrease for the Public Works, Roads, and Streets Department is $15,000. The next department is going to appear new to you guys, and it is. You won't recognize it from your original budget. This is the Solid Waste Collection Department. Now, we created this to be compliant with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs Uniform Chart of Accounts. Y'all have initiated downtown garbage pickup as part of your beautification of downtown. And so we have created an expenditure account to capture that. Now, we are billing it, so you'll see the revenue side of that as well. But right now we're incurred about $6,000 in that expenditure line, and we're adjusting for that. The Community Center Department, you're all well aware, we've incurred renovation expenditures there. And that amount is $45,000, not 43, $45,000. The Parks Department, we have had renovations at Hillman and Robert Bridges Park. The total of those together is $78,000, which is the requested budget increase for the Parks Department. These next three departments, your inspections, planning and zoning, and code enforcement, are all changes based on assessing where we are year to date as compared to our budget, and moving some things around between departments to cover anticipated expenditures for the fiscal year. The inspections department would increase $10,000, planning and zoning would decrease $10,000, and then your code enforcement has an $8,000 increase. And the last thing on the expenditure side of the general fund is what we call an other financing use. So you'll see other financing source and other financing use. And this is our transfer to LMIG. $170,000 will cover our LMIG match, and you will see how that's applied to projects when we get to the LMIG fund. So in totality, the expenditures in the general fund is increasing $563. The net is a deficit amendment to the general fund of $162,557. And I want to be clear because that terminology can be confusing. This is not saying we're going to have that deficit in the general fund. It's just the budget for revenues and the budget for expenditures. In this amendment, there's a deficit. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, most of that is your $180,000 that we're going to, and the $170 from LMIG and the $180 for police. Those are the big items that are in here. Everything else is kind of a lot of housekeeping. Okay. All right. So we'll go into your other governmental funds. These are your small funds that are either established as special revenue funds or capital project fund or the debt service fund. So the first one we have is your ARPA fund. You will see we are adjusting the budget for revenue to recognize the revenue. In government accounting, you recognize expenditures when they're incurred, and you match that revenue to those expenditures. So all that ARPA money received has been sitting in unearned revenue because it's not been earned yet, because you have to meet the grant obligations before it's recognized as revenue. So now that we've got these expenditures for Oak Springs, the equipment, those items now, we can recognize the revenue associated with it. So you'll see an increase in your ARPA revenues and an increase in your ARPA expenditures for a net ARPA amendment of 0. The SPLOST fund, this is related to change in the fiscal year. Of the revenue associated with that, we are going to release in interest expenditures because of making that. And so this is capturing that. This transfer to debt service in the totality, so we're going to reduce that by $55,000. So this is your first real tangible realization of some interest savings here. On your LMIG, and this is what I mentioned earlier, dollars for Atlanta and for other grants, and then we also have an interest adjustment here. So your total LMIG revenue budget is going to increase by $122,079. That projects for Hammond, Dooleytown, and Sunset, as you see here, with the 106,246 and the 30,000, and that's what I mentioned earlier, funded by that LMIG match. Debt service fund is really just housekeeping. For whatever reason, on board the Series 2012 bonds were paid from SPLOST debt service fund to the water fund because that's where the debt sits. It's really not necessary to make an accounting mess. Just to take that extra step, it creates a whole other layer of accounting because it's not necessary. So it will be straight from SPLOST to the water fund, and we're going to eliminate this through process of debt service fund. It's just more accounting and auditing that's not necessary. So that's just housekeeping. And then finally, our water fund or our enterprise fund. This is your business type activity, and we have several large adjustments here. In terms of revenues, the biggest one is water tax. Although we have adjustments to increase the budget lines for revenues of water deposit, water tax, and sewer capacity. And this is really just accounting for things that have happened throughout this fiscal year so far that were not anticipated in the original budget. So that will increase your revenues by $323,500. The other financing sources, again, that debt service, I mentioned it hits SPLOST, debt, and water, so you're going to see it a couple of times. That $55,000 does those interest savings. And then we're eliminating this use of reserves. And I'm eliminating this line item in part because, a lot of that is saying we budgeted a deficit in the water fund. However, now mid-year, we are increasing our revenues by $323,500. We will see some increases on the expenditure side, but I'm at this mid-year level comfortable saying we're not going to have a use of reserves of $660,000.
Any questions? Very good job. We're looking good. We're looking good. Okay, now we get to number 5, National Day of Prayer, May 1st, Joshua Mossman.
Thank you guys for letting me speak. I want to read in,
Make sure you speak in,
before I speak on my own statement.
Joshua, make sure you speak into the microphone.
I pulled it down. You might.
Yeah, you're taller. Yeah.
Actually, you need to turn there's a switch on it. I think it's off right now. Yep, that one. Flip it. There you go. Light is green.
My name is Joshua Mossman, and thank you guys for letting me speak in front of you. I would like to read a little bit in Revelations before I go into National Day of Prayer and the purpose of National Day of Prayer for Statham. But the Revelations 5:8 through 14 says, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slaughtered to receive the power, wealth, and wisdom, strength, honor, and glory, and praise." I heard every creation in heaven, on earth, under the earth, and unto them saying, "To the one who sit on the throne and to the Lamb be praised, honor, and glory, and power forever and ever." Then the 4 living creation said, "Amen." And the elders bowed down and worshiped God. Now, National Day of Prayer is a day of committing ourselves as councils, as leaders, to God. The National Day of Prayer for Statham, I would like for it to represent just that. A day of prayer, a day to give thanks to God for the future, a day to uplift our community as leaders and our community leaders in communities as one. The call to arms to build the face of leadership in Christ. To be leaders that speak of God to the people that need it. To change the outcome of the state and our lives. The people often leave in cursed events, but not police officers. Every day they face the enemy of evil, including alcohol. This is the National Day of Prayer throughout the state. This is my request for the Statham, to let our voice be one. To let our voice be one. This is the National Day of Prayer throughout the state. Let us pray and uplift our police forces throughout the state. For such a time as this, as one voice is calling, we must use our voice and answer with prayer. On May the 1st, it will be National Day of Prayer. On May the 6th, I would like to see the police department have an appreciation day, games, event interactions with the Statham community to show that the community stand behind them guys. But the calling to all vendors to join the police parade and to let us make an impact in our community, in our county as one community, bringing uplifting music and good food and face paintings and pictures with police officers who serve our communities in the common goal of health. Now on May 6th would mark the day of Barrow County and the surrounding counties as operating no dope. Notice the analogy of National Day of Prayer and no dope. It is time to crack down on businesses and individuals with cocaine and crack paraphernalia and methamphetamine paraphernalia and paraphernalia for heroin that are sold in stores. These stores need to be sanctioned and fined and push these people out of our communities, not allow them in our communities because they're killing our kids. Okay, these companies need to be away from our schools and our communities. Our children are the future and at risk if we allow this to continue without standing up against the problem. Through the problem, though this problem will never go away, sanctions and fines will push the stores to stop killing the people that get rich off of us as customers, or we as a country or a county need to sue these businesses for selling drug paraphernalia to kill the people of America. Instead of destroying the people, let us as law destroy the businesses that cause devastative or destructive thoughts in people. Lord, let us be on the path to righteousness. Now, my proposal is, my name is, did I already read this? My name is Joshua Mossman. I would like to propose a House bill to be brought forth here in Barrow County and to be put into motion to be setting standards, new standards in zero tolerance against drug paraphernalia being sold here in our community. This is a call to arms, to have silence in the night. Here in as far as Barrow County and the surrounding counties and communities, to sanction all companies that do take part in destroying our families. I've already read that, have I not? Okay, I'm sorry, I don't mean to preach, but all companies that destroy our families, that destroy our businesses. We have kids that come to school here.
Yep.
We have churches that people need more than they need alcohol or than they need the $7 crack pipes that are allowed to be sold in these stores that anybody can go get because they don't check IDs out here. That's wrong completely. Now these rose tubes that you can use that's sold under the legal definition of a product is straight out just a crack pipe. It's everywhere out here. Meth pipes that are sold as oil burners. $7 in a store to kill these kids out here and to make these guys' jobs harder. And then approved of alcohol in a small town like this, which will already destroy the future of this community. That's the truth about the facts of spirits, because the real spirit belongs to God. That's the real facts. These man-made spirits are nothing but possessions. These paraphernalias that are allowed to be sold kill our kids and kill our spirit. That's the problem that I have. But National Day of Prayer, I would like for my county leaders to meet all as one to stop this, because with alcohol you get violence. With drugs, you get the same. Families break down. Families kill each other. Families are traumatized. Just look at what happened at the school here a year ago.
I didn't think so.
I'm just saying, what happened then, everybody went to the school and prayed to the Heavenly Father. It's time to put God back in his rightful place, back in his rightful place in our communities, and it starts with these small communities. So National Day of Prayer, I would like for the council to really take in consideration of the people and not just the funds that some of these things could create and help the city of Statham with. So,
What's your name, sir?
my name is Joshua Mossman.
Okay.
Have you spoken with the county or other cities in Barrow County?
I've spoken with several other,
I'm sorry to interject, but the agenda item is National Day of Prayer. I feel like we're going way far afield of that. I just want to make sure that we stay on the agenda rather than other topics. This is perfectly discussion for public comment, but I just want to make sure
I
we
have
stay
spoken
in
with
line with the
several other
agenda.
counties about National Day of Prayer. I've also sent letters to several other politicians on National Day of Prayer, so
I'd
yes.
like to talk to you afterwards.
Yes, sir.
Afterwards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I know my time is up. Thank you, guys. Thank you all, council, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Joshua. I do believe we do have a National Day of Prayer in Winder for the county.
Each city has to adopt a
Okay.
resolution or a proclamation establishing a National Day of Prayer.
Okay, all right,
But yes, there are many jurisdictions that do that
right.
around
Okay.
here.
In the past, we've had it out at the Legion. I know it seems like it's been a couple of years since we've had it, but
Okay.
that's what we've had in the past.
All right. The next agenda item that we have has been pulled from the agenda. So now we're opening the floor for citizen input. Did we have anybody sign up for citizen input?
Just Mr. Mossman.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's just who signed up for public comment. You're the only one for public comment. I assume what you said was what you intended to say during public comment? Of course. Yep.
All right.
I do have one more comment. Very good job. Y'all are doing a real excellent job with this budget and the county committee. Y'all are doing a spot on.
Thank you. Appreciate that. With no other citizen input, I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, show of hands. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.